Second, third, and fourth P of saintly corruption. Today's advanced corruption, weapon sales for oil, is a master's degree obtained from the University of yesteryear's corruption, when the powerful traded opium and whiskey for a country's treasures and the people's dignity. 390 BC, the Qin dynasty united all of China and created an empire. They worked hard to protect and isolate that dynasty from the world, even to the point of building the Great Wall. They wanted seclusion because the Chinese people believed their land, Zhenghua, was the Middle Kingdom, halfway between heaven and earth, and like many people back then, the Chinese believed their nation was the center of the universe, and the lowest peasant knew that all roads into China led from barbarianism into civilization. For over 2,000 years, Chinese life is at the mercy of heavenly dictates, and the people lived in blind obedience to the will of heaven. Like all empires formed under God, only the emperor, or in the case of religions, only the pope or archbishop or chief witch doctor has the power to interpret the holy messages. Towards the end of the 19th century, China was a nation of about 400 million people, and like all other dynasties, kept the supreme leader secluded from the masses. Oh, there are times when leaders will sprinkle heavenly dust onto his or her subjects by taking a ride in public or making a speech. The royal family of England, the Pope, the Dalai Lama, presidents like those of the US and Russia, the Prime Minister of Canada and England, to name only a few. Unfortunately, each one provides false leadership because the subjects are brainwashed to believe their country, their religion, their culture, their political philosophy is the best, the most powerful, the most righteous, the most generous of all. Therefore, one does not argue with perfection, and therein lies the peasant manipulation. All members of society live by the creed that what we believe or support or do is the best. Therefore, we are number one. Thus, like football, baseball, soccer, if number two steps forward, we must crush them. This false propaganda and the inability of the average citizen to be part of the actual leadership decisions enables each group of elites to remain in power at the expense of the peasants at the bottom. A 2015 report estimates 190,000 drug-related deaths worldwide. Let's get back to the example of China. To the trade-hungry nations of the West, China, during the 19th century, is the largest untapped market on the globe, and therefore became a plum, ripe for the plucking. Uninvited and unwanted, the Western nations forced their way in. In hopes to control the invasion, China restricts foreigners to a single port, Canton. Foreigners are not allowed to visit other places in the Middle Kingdom. Canton becomes the hub of the tea, silk, and porcelain trades. Here's the best part. The Christian dynasty, Britain, pays for China's treasures, not with gold, but with opium from India. Dens of addiction become part of China's cities and villages. This travesty is not unlike the use of whiskey in accomplishing the great American dream in the Americas. There is a statement within the Christian faith, pray to God, but row for shore. However, there seems to be a second part. When you reach shore, the whiskey or opium you brought in the bottom will enable you to dominate the unsuspecting pagans, heathens. By 1839, the Chinese had had enough. A shipment of opium is seized, burned, and dumped into the Canton harbor. Guess what? Instead of apologizing for introducing opium into China, the great Christian countries, acting under the greed virus-infected American dream, the selfish, self-centered free enterprise system, used this act of self-perseverance, self-defense by China as an excuse to invade China. Strange how these Christian countries are never guilty of war crimes. Oh, don't kid yourself. I am well aware that China and all other countries are also guilty of this evil. When will it stop? Rule Britannia, Britannia rule a wave. Britons never, never, never shall be slave. We don't care if other people crave. We have power and their wealth. We don't care if it put them in the grave. In this world of humans, too many people and countries live this philosophy every day. When the powerful invade, it's called advancing civilization. When the powerful defend their country, it's called patriotism. British ships block the harbor. A few thousand troops, equipped with the latest weapons of war, are landed. They move inland, seizing cities and towns. August 1842, aboard HMS Cornwallis, the Chinese sign a humiliating treaty, a twin to the agreements signed in other subdued lands. Thanks to this bullying tactic, opium continued to flow into China and the arteries of the Chinese people. Added to this insult was the confiscating of the island of Hong Kong, which was surrendered to the British Empire. Against China's better judgment, more seaports are open to these Christian barbarians. As the U.S. Marines would say, "Hoorah!" which means, who cares? We're number one. Now that Britain has opened the door, the scavenging by other great Christian nations began. Germany, Russia, France, and the U.S. There is still no shame in these Christian countries, because they commonly refer to this time period as the Opium Wars. The first war on drugs was not a fight by saintly Christian nations to end drug abuse, but rather a war against a dominated country and its people who dared to say to the Christian British Empire, "You cannot bring drugs into our country." An example of something turning around and biting the biter in the ass. During that time in history, and even today, Christian empires didn't then and still don't apologize for starting the worldwide drug trade. So it begs the question, why should today's dealers apologize? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. This bullying by Britain allowed the foreigners to establish areas in which they ruled, making many Chinese aliens in their own land. This presented the real danger that China would be carved up, which gave the Chinese a strong sense of crisis. With the country now in the control of too many foreign entities, an army of invading Christian missionaries moved in and did more to unleash chaos than any other international body existing in China. The Christians branded all Chinese as heathens and themselves as superior. "Ooh-ah, we are the best. We are the greatest." All these rants are concepts and methodologies that keep the world's countries, religions, cultures, and political philosophies at war with each other. Those who fight back are not patriots of their country, but ignorant savages, revolutionaries, heathens, or in the case of politics, deplorables. Unless, of course, you're from one of the Christian countries, like Canada, United States, England, France. Then it's patriotic to fight for your country. The same yesterday, today, but hopefully not tomorrow. At the end of the Boxer Rebellion, foreign invaders from Christian nations stood by and watched thousands of Chinese patriots beheaded. Their evil crime? Wanting their country to remain their country. Hard to fathom the arrogance of a group of people, then or now, wanting to stay true to their constitution, to their ancestry, to their culture. Staggers the mind. This is a great example of divine exploitation that exists within all of the 4 P's of saintly corruption: poor parenting, unkind religions, warped politics, and greed virus-infected proprietorship activities. It is also an excellent sample of the continued lie culture of all groups, countries, and media representatives who claim our sins are pure. Therefore, we remain the greatest nation, the greatest religion, the greatest political system on earth. Hoo-ah! Other than the love of money, why do we hide the true truth? And why do we refuse to let it guide our decision-making? Every system fails. Communism, socialism, democracy, free enterprise. But that failure is caused by the selfish rules enacted by the elite and enforced by the deplorables. Don't you think it's time the deplorables had a valued voice in their lives? Personally, I have not found any country throughout history or any peoples, regardless of their creed, that operates on a consistently honorable mind frame. The Barnes theory of voting. Go for it. Saudi savagery. Saudi Arabia mass execution. Lad, 16, tortured with electricity and beheaded just for sending WhatsApp messages about protests. Abdul Karim al-Hawa was put to death in front of a baying crowd, along with 36 other men who were executed this week in the barbaric desert kingdom. April 26, 2019, as reported by The Sun. Your country, your rules, so go ahead. Chop chop. I'm a Christian from a Christian country. I must turn my back while you chop heads. Must pretend I don't see, and that we care about all people, not just the elite and Americans. Boy, have I got a deal for you. Put your fabulous signature here, good prince, and by tomorrow, boom, boom, heaven is at your fingertips. Sign today, and tomorrow you can start bombing those Yemen kids. No fake news today. Big sale. Isn't the American dream great? Our weapons will cut the cost of your wars. Once they arrive, my good prince, starvation attacks your deplorables. Economically, an excellent method for eliminating ugly deplorables. You must be a great king. You don't have troublesome deplorables. Thank you. That's due to cutting-edge technology.